How in the world did a 20-year-old psychopath, barely out of high school, get himself into an elevated position with an AR-15 rifle to take shots at an American presidential candidate, and was not stopped by the United States Secret Service or by local law enforcement before he opened fire and nearly killed an American presidential candidate? Hi, this is Joel Rosenberg with a Rosenberg Report YouTube exclusive. I'm in Denver, and moments after I arrived in Denver, I've been traveling all over the United States over the last month. I'm traveling for another month, speaking to evangelical leaders all over the country about what's happening in Israel and the threats that we're facing there from Hamas, the increasing war that Israel is facing with Hezbollah in the north of Israel, with Hezbollah in Lebanon, and how we're dealing with the Iranian threat and so forth, and the future of U.S.-Israel relations. Heading to Washington next week to cover the speech by Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to a joint session of Congress, a major address. I've been invited by a member of Congress to attend the speech. I'll be in the chamber, and I'll be providing coverage for the Rosenberg Report and, of course, for All Israel News. So that's what I've been doing. That's why I've been here. But I'm out here in Denver, not only meeting with various evangelical leaders and Joshua Fund supporters and All Israel News supporters and so forth, but to visit my family. And I landed with my wife here at the Denver International Airport on Saturday afternoon. And literally, as we're driving from the airport to my parents' home to check on them, this news started to break. So it's bad at so many levels, but what still is unknown is the motive of the 20-year-old who is responsible. And I'm not going to use his name. I don't want to give him any extra attention. We obviously have to understand who he was and why he did this, and we just don't know that yet. Again, we know he was 20 years old. We know he was barely out of high school. We know that he used his father's AR-15. We know that he was a troubled youth that had been bullied in high school, had very few friends, was considered a loner. We know that he had given money to a Democratic political organization to elect Democrats to office, though he himself, for some reason, had registered as a Republican. So there's a lot of questions there. I want to walk you through some of the video that we saw, and I want to ask a series of questions. These are questions that are going to have to be answered, because this whole thing has read like something ripped out of the pages of one of my political thrillers, right? You know that my most recent series of thrillers, starting with the Kremlin conspiracy and right up to the Libyan diversion, all these 5 novels deal with a former U.S. Secret Service agent, Marcus Riker. And so in these books, and of course in past political thrillers, I deal with threats to American political leaders as well as to Israeli and Arab political leaders. My novel, The Jerusalem Assassin, was about people trying to assassinate the Israeli Prime Minister and the Crown Prince of the King, rather, of Saudi Arabia, and the President of the United States, and so forth. And so I've dealt with this a lot over the years, this issue of the type of security that's necessary to keep world leaders, American leaders, safe. But this is just a bizarre situation. I'm going to take you to Butler, Pennsylvania. It's a community just outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, in western Pennsylvania. And I happen to know this town. I've been to Butler because my wife has family in Butler. My wife's family is originally from the Pittsburgh area, from different towns and communities around Pittsburgh, but Butler is one of them. I have been talking, and my wife has been talking to a number of people to try to understand what actually happened. Butler, Pennsylvania, and Pittsburgh generally is Trump country. Western Pennsylvania is very conservative, not the city so much, but as the more rural areas, very strongly pro-Trump and very conservative, grassroots. So it was not surprising that Trump would hold a rally there, and it was a huge rally. I mean, if you look at the video, the still images of just how big this rally was. It was very, very impressive. And Trump wants to win Pennsylvania. He did not win Pennsylvania in the 2020 election. He did win it, I believe. We'll double check that. But I believe he won it in 2016, and it helped him win the presidency. But by not winning it, he did not win the presidency in 2020, and he wants it badly. So he's working hard to appeal to the rural and industrial Rust Belt voters who feel abandoned by the Democratic Party, have felt abandoned by other Republicans in the past, and Trump is trying to appeal to voters who feel very disaffected, that people by the elites in Washington who don't get them, and so that's why he was there. Now, what's interesting is that it had been many days. The event had been advertised, so it's not like somebody who wanted to do harm didn't know what was going to happen. But what's interesting is that this 20-year-old would-be assassin was able to get not into the actual secure area of the rally. Okay, that's where you have to go through all kinds of security, including metal detector, and have your bags checked by Secret Service and so forth. So this didn't happen inside that main rally area. The shooter put himself up on top of a building that was just outside that perimeter, but was in an elevated position overlooking the stage where Trump was speaking. Now, there was a barn behind Trump, just off to the side, in which there were two Secret Service sharpshooters or counter sharpshooters. These are people with high-powered rifles with incredibly intense, high-powered scopes, looking for danger and being told through their earpieces, oh, there's a threat here or there's a threat here. There were police everywhere. There were local and state law enforcement as well as federal law enforcement everywhere, not just guarding the actual rally site, but the areas around it, making sure, keeping an eye out for any possible threats or dangers, right? But somehow, this 20-year-old kid is able to bring a rifle, an AR-15 from his father, apparently, into this area that's fairly close to the edge of the rally site. Not only is he able to get there, but he's able to climb up a ladder onto a roof that has a position, again, a direct line of sight, only about 142 yards, we're told, 142 or 43 yards from the actual position where Trump is speaking, okay? Now, why wasn't there any police or state troopers guarding that building that the 20-year-old got on top of, just to make sure that nothing like that happened? I've never seen a situation in which buildings that had overlook capacity to a presidential candidate's position wasn't guarded directly by either the Secret Service themselves or by local or state law enforcement. But it wasn't. Moreover, why weren't there police or sharpshooters or others on that roof, again, looking at other angles, looking for other threats, and making sure that, of course, no one could get up there? This is insane that wasn't done. So this 20-year-old walks into this area on the edges of a presidential candidate's rally with a rifle. People who are Trump supporters who didn't get tickets to get inside the rally site but are still able to see and hear from a bit of a distance, see this young man climbing up the ladder with a rifle. And they're shouting now at police officers and security officials saying, hey, there's a guy with a gun climbing up onto that roof. Then they witness, and you can see in some of this video, you can see this 20-year-old is like army crawling on that roof to keep his head down, to keep himself invisible from the Secret Service sharpshooters or anyone else that might be watching. He's able, however, to get into a position where people on the ground can see him and are shouting or screaming, there's a guy with a gun over there. There was a fascinating and I would say astonishing interview on the BBC News, with one of the guys that a red-headed Trump supporter wearing a Trump hat, who was one of the guys shouting, hey, there's a guy with a gun there. And he said for 2 to 3 minutes was warning of this, as were his friends and the others around. drawing some police attention, but mostly the police and Secret Service seemed to be looking at him and his colleagues who were shouting, but they said, we're pointing. Why weren't they turning their attention to what we were saying? Maybe they couldn't hear it, but why weren't they at least looking in the direction that all these people are pointing? I don't know. There's no answers right now. But moreover, how is it possible that those sharpshooters did not see a guy with an AR-15 putting himself in position, and why didn't they take action before that shooter was able to open fire himself and shoot up to 8 rounds, one of which literally hit Trump in the head, though it ripped off a piece of Trump's right ear. But for a fingernail, a millimeter of distance, that one of those bullets would have blown off Donald Trump's head. It's a miracle. It is an absolute miracle that didn't happen. Also, when Trump feels this and he's hearing other rounds, he turns and goes down immediately. But if he'd turned just slightly the other direction, the next bullet would have hit him. There's an actual photo by a New York Times veteran photographer, photojournalist named Doug Mills. It's just a stunning photo. I didn't even believe it was real at first, but it is. It literally shows the trajectory of a bullet streaking past Donald Trump's, just the back of Donald Trump's head, meaning it had already passed Trump and was going by him. That's one of the bullets that could have killed him, but thank God it did not. But this is a massive security breach. Now, it could have been worse. It could have been a catastrophic failure because we could have a dead American presidential candidate. And God only knows what would have happened to the country if that had happened. We are in such a stage of heightened political animosity, cultural animosity, spiritual tension, spiritual warfare. I mean, there have been polls that say that Americans fear a second civil war. And on this week's Rosenberg Report, I'm going to talk about that danger, that this whole country is going to just blow. People are calling Donald Trump Hitler. Like, you don't have to love Donald Trump or agree with him on everything, but he's not Adolf Hitler. He's not an existential threat to American democracy. But an assassin that is not stopped by the U.S. Secret Service, that is a threat to American democracy. That is an existential threat to the country. And, at the minimum, there's going to have to be hearings with the director of Secret Service to say what in the world happened. You give us a justification for how that person got up in that position in the 21st century with all that we've learned, that all the Secret Service has learned about presidential candidate protection. It's unconscionable. But thank God the Lord protected Donald Trump. And I'm not saying that as a partisan. It's just obviously 100% the truth. We need to pray for all of our candidates. We need to pray for their protection. We need to pray that this election can get to the end in a peaceful way. We got to pray for this country. This is Joel Rosenberg in Denver for the Rosenberg Report, a YouTube exclusive.